Would you trust the love of your life and your best friend blindly? Well, I did. My name is Gustavo, and until recently, I believed I had the perfect life. My wife Helena was the center of my world, and my cousin Lucas, like a younger brother, was my family within the family. We had a cozy home, a peaceful lifestyle, and I believed that nothing could shake what we had built. But everything changed in the blink of an eye. A betrayal that I could never have imagined was about to turn my world upside down. And the worst part, the excuse she gave me. It still echoes in my mind to this day. If you've ever had your trust broken by someone you loved, you'll understand every detail of this story. Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like it, and activate the bell for more stories like this. Now, let's continue with the story. I always believed that happiness was in the little moments. Waking up next to Helena, the smell of coffee in the morning, the conversations after a day of work. Our life had a calm, almost predictable rhythm, but that was comforting. Helena was everything to me. From the day we got married, I promised I would do everything to see her happy. I worked hard, sometimes more than I should have, but always thinking about the future we were building together. It was for her, for us. And then there was Lucas, my younger cousin. He grew up by my side. He was like a brother. I always respected and trusted him. He was present at so many important moments in my life that he wasn't just family. He was a loyal friend. Lucas would often come over to our house. We would have lunch together on the weekends. Sometimes we would improvise barbecues in the backyard. It was good to have him around. He brought a lightness that complemented our routine. I thought we had it all. A cozy house in a quiet neighborhood, a stable job, and above all, a relationship that I believed was unshakable. The complicity between Helena and me was something I deeply valued, or at least that's what I thought. Sometimes, comfort blinds us to what is right before our eyes. I believed the world was in balance, but without realizing it, the ground was already starting to crumble beneath my feet. Sometimes, life starts to change in small, almost imperceptible doses. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. Helena seemed more distracted than usual, but I assumed it was work, or maybe fatigue. We all have our days, right? But as the weeks went by, the changes became more evident. She would distance herself during our conversations, looking at her cell phone, as if something there was more interesting than the moment we were living together. Her hugs, once so warm, were now quick and cold, almost mechanical. Deep down, I knew something was wrong, but I tried to justify it. I thought, maybe she's going through a phase, or maybe I'm just being paranoid. After all, we had been married for years and had a lifetime of shared stories. It couldn't be anything serious, or at least, that's what I wanted to believe. Lucas, my cousin, continued to visit our house. He would come over on weekends, help with small repairs, and even bring us food from time to time. I always thought he was the kind of person I could trust with my eyes closed. However, I began to notice something strange in the looks Helena and Lucas exchanged. Small gestures, muffled laughter, at something that seemed like a secret only between them. Again, I ignored it. I convinced myself that my mind was playing tricks on me. But there was something I couldn't ignore. Intuition. That uncomfortable feeling, like a knot in my stomach, that grew stronger every day. I refused to confront it, afraid that my perfect world would fall apart. And so I continued blindly, ignoring the signs, until they became impossible to ignore. It was supposed to be a normal Tuesday. I had left home early, as usual. But when I got to work, I realized that I had forgotten an important folder. With an online meeting scheduled for soon, I decided to quickly head home to pick her up. When I parked my car in front of the house, something seemed different. There was no sound coming from the street or the house, but the silence was uncomfortable, almost oppressive. I entered the front door carefully, not wanting to wake Helena in case she was resting. That's when I heard it. Muffled laughter. At first I thought it was the television on, but Helena never watched anything without headphones. The laughter was coming from upstairs. My heart raced, and a knot formed in my stomach. Maybe it was something innocent, I thought. Maybe. I walked up the stairs slowly, each step weighing more than the last. The laughter became clearer. And then the voices, too familiar for me to pretend I didn't know who they belonged to. It was her voice. And his. Lucas. I stopped at the bedroom door, my hand trembling on the doorknob. A part of me begged not to open it, to pretend I wasn't hearing anything, but another stronger part knew I needed to see it with my own eyes. I took a deep breath, gathered all the courage I had left, and pushed the door open. There they were, Helena and Lucas, in my bed. My bed. They were so involved that they didn't even notice my presence right away. I stood there, frozen, watching, as everything I believed in disintegrated before me. When they finally noticed me, there was a deafening silence. Helena grabbed the sheets, trying to cover herself, while Lucas avoided my gaze, embarrassed. My mind was spinning. I didn't know what to do. Anger, disbelief, and a deep sadness mixed inside me. And then, she had the nerve to say, "Gustavo, it's not what it seems." I laughed, a dry, bitter laugh that came out without me realizing it. Was that it? Was that the excuse? How could something like that not be what it seems? Lucas tried to speak, but I raised my hand, asking for silence. I didn't want to hear anything from either of them. Helena stammered, "Gustavo, listen to me. You've been so distant lately. I just wanted to understand what you were feeling." Lucas was here. It was like a punch in the stomach. Her excuse was worse than the betrayal itself. I looked at both of them, without saying a word. I left the room, and then the house. I needed air. I needed to escape that scene that would never leave my mind. I got in the car and slammed the door hard, as if that could relieve the pressure I felt in my chest. My heart was still racing, my breathing was out of control, and my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. I felt betrayed, humiliated, but above all, empty. For a few minutes, I sat there trying to process what had just happened. Every detail of the scene replayed in my head, like a bad movie that you can't turn off. I wanted to scream, cry, explode, but I didn't do any of that. I just stood there, staring into space. Why? That was the only question echoing in my mind. Why did she do this to me? Why him, of all people, Lucas, someone I trusted blindly? The weight of betrayal crushed me, and at the same time, anger began to grow inside me, slowly but relentlessly. I needed space. I needed time to think. So, with no clear destination in mind, I started the car and started driving. I didn't know where I was going. I just wanted to get as far away as possible from that house, from that scene, from those two. As I drove through the city streets, I began to reflect on everything. I had dedicated my life to Helena. I had worked hard. I had given up on personal dreams to build a future for us. And Lucas, he was like a brother to me, someone who had grown up by my side, shared moments of my childhood and adolescence. Anger mixed with pain, and for the first time, I allowed a few tears to escape. It wasn't easy to accept that the people you trust most are capable of stabbing you in the back. I stopped the car in a deserted park, sat on a bench, and stared at the sky, searching for answers that I knew would not come. The night was cold, and the silence around me seemed to amplify the noise inside my head. I knew I needed to decide what to do. Going home was not an option, at least not that night. Facing Helene or Lucas at that moment would only make me lose control. So, I made the decision to give myself a break. I stayed there, in the dark, thinking about my life, about everything I had built, and how it had crumbled so quickly. It wasn't just the end of a marriage, or the betrayal of a friend. It was the end of an illusion. And it was in that moment, in that silence, that something changed inside me. I knew I couldn't leave it like this. They had destroyed my trust, my peace, my life. But I wasn't going to let them destroy my future. From that moment on, my pain began to transform into something different. Determination. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew I would make them both feel the weight of the choices they had made. I spent days in silence, digesting everything. Each moment was a mixture of pain and outrage, but little by little, I began to see things more clearly. They had betrayed me, destroyed my trust, and the life I had built. But now it was my turn to act. It wouldn't be an impulsive confrontation. It would be something meticulous, planned. First, I analyzed everything I had in hand. Our house, the joint accounts, the assets, everything I had worked so hard to achieve. Helena thought she still had control over all of this, but she had no idea what I was preparing. On the days when she went out to sort things out, which was probably a euphemism for meeting Lucas, I acted. I discreetly visited lawyers, made changes to I signed the documents, and transferred everything to my name. House, cars, bank accounts. Every detail was calculated so that when she finally found out, it would already be too late. In the meantime, I started tracking Lucas's life. I discovered that he was drowning in debt and that his financial situation was more delicate than he let on. I made some strategic calls to creditors and, well, let's just say, he soon began to feel the weight of the choices he had made. He lost his job after confidential information about his alternative loans reached his boss. Everything was planned, every piece in place. Helena, on the other hand, seemed oblivious to everything. She still believed that I was accepting what had happened, that eventually I would forgive her and things would go back to normal. I kept up that appearance. I feigned concern for our finances, used excuses like, "We need to save money," to justify some changes in our routine. She agreed without question. And so, I continued to put my plan together, piece by piece. It wasn't just about taking from them everything they had taken from me. It was about standing up for myself, about showing that I wasn't someone who could be walked all over, without consequences. The final part of my plan had to be perfect. It wouldn't just be a quiet revenge. It would be a moment of complete exposure. They needed to know that I knew, and that every consequence they faced would be a direct result of their actions. Helena thought I was still trying to save our marriage. Lucas thought he could disappear and avoid the consequences, but neither of them had any idea what was coming. Dinner would be the perfect setting, an intimate, welcoming environment for her to let her guard down completely. Meanwhile, Lucas, already broken, little did he know that he was part of the final piece of this puzzle. With every step I took, I felt my pain transform. It wasn't just anger or indignation anymore. It was a cold sense of control, of justice. They had made their choices, and now it was my turn to make mine. I knew I was close to the final showdown, the moment when everything would be revealed, and they would finally understand the impact of their actions. It wasn't just revenge. It was about freeing myself from the burden they had placed on me, and I was ready. The table was set, 2 plates, candles lit, Helena's favorite wine. Every detail of the dinner was thought out to create the perfect atmosphere. To her, it seemed like a gesture of reconciliation, an attempt at a new beginning. But to me, it was the stage where everything would be revealed. When Helena came down the stairs, she wore a shy smile. Maybe it was relief, maybe a false hope that things really were getting back to normal. "You made my favorite dish," she commented, with a hint of enthusiasm I hadn't seen in a long time. I returned it with a calculated smile. Throughout the meal, I kept the conversation light. I talked about work, our plans for the future, and even relived some happy memories from the beginning of our marriage. I wanted her to feel comfortable, to believe that this dinner was a step towards rebuilding what we had lost. And it worked. Helena laughed a few times and seemed relaxed, as if the weight of betrayal was dissipating. But then, I put my wine glass on the table and picked up the folder that was next to me. Helena frowned in confusion. "What is this?" she asked, her smile hesitant. "Helena," I began, looking her straight in the eye. "There's something you need to know." The smile disappeared instantly. Her eyes went from confused to worried. She knew something was coming, but she didn't know what. Slowly, I took an envelope out of the briefcase and placed it in front of her. "These are the divorce papers," I explained calmly, "and a letter. In it, I've detailed everything I know, everything I've done, and everything you're going to lose." Helena opened the envelope with shaking hands. First, she looked at the divorce papers. Then she began to read the letter. I stood there, watching as her eyes scanned each line. Her expression changed from disbelief to despair, and finally to panic. "You transferred everything into your name?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Yes, Helena. The house, the money, the cars. You don't have anything anymore. And Lucas? Well, he's also facing the consequences of the choices you two made together." She tried to say something, but I cut her off, keeping my tone firm and cold. "You destroyed what we had, Helena. You thought I would just take it lying down, that I would let it go. But I'm not that man. You two deserve each other, and know everything that comes with it." The silence that followed was deafening. Helena seemed frozen, unable to react. I got up from the table, grabbed my coat, and walked to the door. Before I left, I turned to her one last time. "Good luck, Helena," I said coldly. "You're going to need it." And then I closed the door. The night was cold, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of relief. As I walked through the empty streets, the weight I had carried for the past few days seemed to finally lift. It wasn't joy I felt, but a quiet calm, a sense that for the first time, I was in control of my own life. I had left Helena behind, along with everything she had represented. Her choices had destroyed not only our marriage, but also the trust I had in her and Lucas. Now they had each other, but without the luxuries and stability I had built. Lucas was facing his own consequences. He would probably never know that I was responsible for everything that had happened to him. But it didn't matter. He had made his choice, and I had made mine. I drove aimlessly for a while, thinking about everything that had happened. Their betrayal had not only destroyed my past, but forced me to reevaluate my future. Before, my life had revolved around Helena, our marriage, and what I thought was an unshakable friendship with Lucas. Now, all of that was behind me. As the sky began to lighten, the first rays of sunlight painted the horizon orange and gold. That sunrise felt different. It was like a symbol of renewal, a reminder that despite everything, life goes on. I knew the road ahead would be difficult. Rebuilding my life would take time, patience, and strength. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had the power to move forward. I no longer carried the weight of anger or hatred. They had already destroyed their own lives, and I didn't have to watch it unfold. As I drove to a place I didn't yet know where it would be, I thought about what it all meant. It wasn't just revenge. It was a learning experience. It was about letting go of the pain and proving to myself that I could overcome anything. As I pulled into a small roadside cafe, I realized something important. Their betrayal didn't define me. What defined me was the way I chose to respond to her. Now, it was time to focus on myself, on my future, and I was ready to start over. What about you? What would you do in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Leave your comment below. I want to know your opinion, and if you also have a story to share, send it to the channel. Who knows, maybe it will be told here. Thank you for watching, and until the next report.